His friends abandoned him for being weak, but he's a god who hides his power. Yet Yogiri is dreaming about the moment he met Asaka, his foster mother. That day, Asaka was taking a job interview to work for a research institute. But upon reading the contract, she noticed a clause that she couldn't complain if the job was the cause of her death. She tries to obviously reject it and leave, however, they force her to sign it. She thought this was the base of an evil organization, but Yukio, the interviewer, tried to dismiss it. While taking the lift, she wanted to know the details about her job, yet Yukio replied that she simply had to take care of a monster. She's shocked to hear it, but Yukio explains they do cursed experiments in their institute. Upon reaching the bottom floor, she notices how dark it is with something written on the doors. Yukio explains that's a scripture. She asks where he is taking her, and he reveals it's to her workplace. While taking another lift, he asks if she knows about Alpha Omega. Since she doesn't, he explains that it means everything or eternity. And that's the name of the test subject she will be taking care of. Asaka asks if that subject is human, but Yukio cannot give her an answer because he has never seen it. All he knows is that Alpha Omega can kill anything he wants just by thinking. Asaka cannot believe they expect her to take care of a monster like that. Yet Yukio replies that's possible because she has a teacher's license. She realizes that's the only reason she got this job, but Yukio tries to explain that if she doesn't do it, humanity could perish. He explains they think they can only avoid that outcome by providing him with an adequate education. She complains because there are other people more suitable for this job. Yet Yukio reveals she's the perfect fit for the job. After finally reaching the final floor, she notices a vault door. Yukio explains he cannot get further from here and gives her some papers with instructions. He wishes her good luck and takes the lift up. She uses her card to open the vault and upon stepping inside, notices how it's not what she expected. She follows the map and reaches a house, but she doesn't seem to find anybody inside. She then hears some noise from a room and opens the door. She then sees that Alpha Omega is just a little innocent kid. Despite the shock, she complains about everyone being scared of a little kid and picks him up. She goes outside and throws him onto the floor, telling him to be a normal kid and play outside. The kid is confused but points his finger at her. She gets scared after remembering that he can kill anything just by thinking. Suddenly, she hears something dropping to the floor and sees some sort of shadow. The kid revealed the thing was hiding in her shadow just to get here. She asks about it, and he calls it a demon, while also revealing they often come there to kill him. Asaka is confused, and the kid tells her that he doesn't mind playing outside, but asks if he can do it tomorrow because it's almost evening. Asaka realizes she forgot about it after losing her head and helps him get up. She introduces herself and asks the kid for his name. He replies they call him Alpha Omega, but before he came there, he was called Lord Akakushi. He then tells her that he's hungry, making her realize that she must also prepare his meals. She checks the fridge and realizes that she cannot cook at all. While checking every kitchen compartment, she finds some cup noodles and gives him to eat. Upon tasting, the kid mentions he likes it, but Asaka is still thinking about his name. She asks about his parents, but the kid doesn't know what's a parent. She apologizes, and upon looking at him, she thinks about a dog and names him Yogiri. The kid asks if Taketu Yogiri sounds good. Asaka doesn't understand why she's using her family name, but realizes that he doesn't know what's a family. She decides to let him use that name and teaches him how to handshake and greet someone. Asaka is preparing breakfast, but she's pissed that the agency didn't provide her with a rice cooker. The meal she's preparing is missing some ingredients. She decides to taste it, and she's horrified by what greets her taste buds. She dishes out the food and Yogiri eats it, but he complains. He tells her the food is yucky and too sticky. She's surprised that's all he had to say to her after she made him breakfast. He tells her he can't compliment her because the food is gross, and she shuts him up angrily. She tells him a guy should never complain about the food a girl cooks for him because it's unattractive. Yogiri doesn't understand what she's talking about, and she forces him to eat the food and say that it's delicious. Yogiri gives in and eats it, telling her that it's delicious. Yogiri is working out some problems when Asaka hears someone come into the house. She wonders who it could be, and Yogiri tells her it could be the courier. Asaka opens the door carefully, and she sees a girl carrying a bag. She asks the girl who she is. The girl tells her she came to bring them groceries with a robot voice. Asaka realizes she's a robot, and she wonders if it's safe to allow Yogiri to grow up whole surrounded by robots. She tells the girl to also bring them other things. Yogiri tells her he's done with the work and she realizes he finished early. She decides to take him outside and she's happy with the view. She can't believe they're underground. Yogiri tells her there are some floating things on the ground and she tells him it's because it's a farm. Asaka has a bad feeling that she won't make it out of there alive. At the end of the month, Asaka presents her monthly report. Her supervisor Yukio is surprised she lasted the whole month. She tells him she won't last much longer because she doesn't think she can give Yogiri the minimum education he needs. He tells her she can make it work, but she tells him she'll need more people. Yukio tells her that it's not that easy because other researchers usually bow out after just one day with Yogiri. Asaka remembers her experience and she sees why others usually last only one day. Yukio asks her if she hates her job and she tells him she hates it with passion. She wonders why she has to be locked away in such a place and Yukio tells her they'll make it worth her while because they value her. He gives her a package and she wonders what it is. She opens it up and he tells her that's her month's salary. She tells him no amount of money can convince her to keep working there. Yukio tells her she can go outside if she wants and she's surprised he never told her that before. He asks her if she would like to leave, but she's worried about Yogiri. Yukio tells her robots will handle his meals, and she wonders why she made his meals. Yukio tells her they needed her to add her special ingredient of love. She immediately submits a vacation request. Suddenly, she wakes up in a cell. She remembers she went into the city, had a meal, and did a lot of shopping. She spent a night at a high-class hotel, but she can't remember how she got to the cell. She wonders if she was caught, and a voice from a communication device tells her they won't cause her any harm. The voice tells her their organization disrupts anomalies and seals them away to protect the world. They just want to have a word with her. The next day, Yogiri asks his courier robot where Asaka is, and she tells him Asaka went on vacation. Yogiri isn't happy to hear this. He sits outside to read, wondering when Asaka will come back. Yogiri sees that his dog is also lonely, and he decides to find Asaka by himself. He asks the robot about Asaka's whereabouts, and she tells him she doesn't know. He asks her to bring the researchers who know her location to him. She tells him she can't go out because she cannot open the door from inside. Yogiri somehow contacts the control room and he tells them to open the door. They are thrown into a panic and they decide to contact Yukio. He rushes down to the control room only to see all of them slumped on the floor. He asks his colleague what's going on and the scientist tells him that Yogiri is controlling the lady scientist and anyone who tried to stop her lost their life. Yukio is surprised that Yogiri can do that. He orders his security detail to shoot the lady scientist, but he suddenly slumps to the ground. Yogiri enters the room and asks Yukio about Asaka, and he tells him she's on vacation. Yogiri asks him when she'll be coming back, and he tells her she won't be coming back because she was taken away by the agency. Yogiri wonders if he'll help her, but he tells him he can't help her because the organization has a global reach and they are not powerful enough to stop them. Yogiri decides to go help her, and he tells Yukio to keep his murder spree a secret. Asaka goes to the agency base, and he tears through everything. He asks those in charge where Asaka is. They think Yogiri's power is to take out anything he sees. They decide to take him about before he sees them. They set up an ambush, but Yogiri takes them out. Asaka is pissed that she didn't get a job at a conventional place, and she wonders how Yogiri is doing. She suddenly hears some commotion outside, and she decides to use that chance to escape. The door suddenly opens, and a woman points a gun to her head. Ayaka is surprised because they said they won't hurt her. The woman takes her hostage, and Yogiri walks into the room. He's happy he's finally found her, but she's surprised to see him. The woman tells him not to move, or she'll unalive Asaka. She keeps threatening Asaka, but he uses his powers to take her life. Asaka wonders what happened to the woman. Yogiri rushes to hug her and he tells her they can go home. They walk out of the room and Ayaka is surprised by the damage Yogiri dealt to the place. She smiles at him reassuringly and they leave the base. She returns him home and she goes to talk with Yukio in the garden. She asks him what will happen after what Yogiri did and Yukio tells her there's nothing to be done. She's surprised that there'll be no punishment for Yogiri's atrocities. Yukio tells her that they definitely can't let her quit now and she's pissed that he's laughing about that. He tells her they'll take extra steps to make sure she remains safe, and he asks her if she's comfortable with continuing her work. She tells him she doesn't feel like quitting at the moment because Yogiri would do worse things if he's left alone. She tells Yukio she still has some things to teach Yogiri just to make him happy. Yogiri tells her he wants to play a game, and he tells him she'll join him soon. She leaves Yukio and runs into the house. She suddenly realizes that she forgot her bag at the agency base, and she's sad that she lost her month's salary. An older Yogiri is awoken from his sleep by his classmate Tomochika, who seems to be in a panic. He opens his eyes, asking who she is, but quickly remembers she's the girl with the weird name. He remembers that before taking a nap they were on a class trip and asked if they already arrived. However, Tomochika replies they haven't, and tells him to wake up and see what's going on. Yogiri looks around and sees several of his classmates, lifeless in their pools of sauce. He notices that one of them is pierced by something strange and asks what it is. He decides to look outside the bus and notices something wrapping around it. He thinks it could be a giant snake or a lizard. To figure it out, he grabs a random mic on the floor and throws it against the pierced guy. Turns out the dead cannot fight you back, but the thing that pierced him starts moving. Yogiri turns its attention outside the bus again and realizes that thing is a huge wyvern. The monster flies up and decides to charge at the bus while preparing to breathe fire. Suddenly, Tomochika hugs him in despair. That moment rewires Yogiri's brain. The sensation of a plot-filled girl holding onto his arm changes his mind. He focuses his mind on opening a door and says one word, die. In the next second, the wyvern suddenly collapses onto the floor. Yogiri tells Tomochika that they're safe, but she's confused and asks about what's going on. Yogiri pulls out his console while telling her to calm down and tell him what happened. After explaining the whole thing, Yogiri realizes there's a big problem. He has no way to recharge his console in this world. He then gets up, mentioning that according to Yazaki it's now safe outside. Tomochika asks if Yogiri did something, but he replies the dragon crashed onto the floor and died. She knows it's a life, but they decide to get out through the window. Upon checking the surroundings, Yogiri notices they can go to the hills, city, or forest. Tomochika then points out that something is flying in the sky. After observing, she realizes it's 3 of their classmates. Yogiri is impressed by her sight at long range and asks if he should kill them. She asks what is wrong with his mind, but Yogiri simply replies they left them behind to die. Tomochika says he shouldn't talk about killing them. Yogiri answers that they could be hostile toward them. She's confused, but the guys start getting closer, also confused because the dragon is dead. One of them notices that Tomochika is still alive, and complains that he was planning to turn her corpse into a zombie so that he could go wild. Yes, that type of wild. The guys talk between themselves, complaining about turning a corpse into a zombie and using her as weird. Hearing those words, Tomochika realizes they clearly cannot be friends. Suddenly, one of the guys casts a huge fireball that barely misses Tomochika. The guys keep talking between themselves how about they refine their magic and how one of them is a healer, the other a hero, and the last a necromancer. The guy who cast the fireball then tells Tomochika to come to his side without resisting. She's confused about his request, but the 3 simply reveal they want to spend their fun time with her. Tomochika realizes they're all after her body. Yogiri is impressed that she has the guts to say that in that situation. The necromancer guy complains she and Yogiri seem too close, but Yogiri simply says he will manage even the conversation. He points at the fireball guy and tells him to die. The other 2 laugh it out but get shocked to see the guy randomly hug the floor. They ask what happened and Yogiri replies he simply ordered him to die. He tells them to not move, but the necromancer tries to check on his friend. Yogiri tells him to die as well. Only Fatso remains, and Yogiri says that if he moves, he will die. Yogiri promises to explain his ability and tells Fatso to check if the other 2 are truly dead. Fatso complies and uses his healing ability, mentioning he can cure anything in an instant. However, his friends don't move. Tomochika realizes that Yogiri is the one who killed the dragon, but he simply didn't want to explain what happened. She gets mad at those words, but Yogiri explains that Fatso is dumb, so he needs to explain in detail to him instead of her. Fatso complains that Yogiri went too far, but our boy simply explains he only did it because they tried to attack him. He then explains that his ability is called instant death to any target. In fact, he doesn't need to tell people to die. He just needs to think about it. Fatso says that's impossible, but Yogiri would love to test the theory. Fatso accepts defeat and tries to get close to Yogiri, pretending to be scared, but he's preparing to attack him with a magic attack. However, Yogiri simply tells him to stop. Fatso is confused and Yogiri explains that he also has an ability that allows him to know if someone has the intent to kill him or not. And to make it worse, he can combine the 2 abilities. In short, he doesn't need to know who's trying to kill him. Fatso gives up in tears and Yagiri asks why they're so cocky so early after getting those skills. Fatso then reveals this is the second time the three of them came to this world. They defeated the demon world and returned to their world. Yagiri asks Tomochika if the three missed any classes, and she replies they didn't. Fatso reveals that when they returned home, only some hours had passed. Yagiri decides to kill him, but Fatso asks Tomochika to help him. Tomochika replies she is only alive because Yagiri saved her, therefore he should deal with it. Fatso calls her cold and pulls out an item, promising that if she puts it on him, she will become her servant. In short, it's a slave collar, and he puts it on himself. He acts like a pervert while walking toward her, but she tells him to stop. The collar starts strangling him, and she asks if there's a way to stop being his master. Fatso obeys the order, mentioning that she can transfer it to another person. She does it, transferring to Yagiri, who decides to not kill him. Instead, Fatso should head to the forest full of monsters and wait there. But before leaving, Fatso should leave all his items and never tell anyone about the Yagiri and Tomochika. Fatso obeys orders, and Tomochika asks if this is okay. Yagiri replies that Fatso will always betray them, therefore it's better this way. She then asks if he isn't suspicious that she might turn him in. Yagiri simply replies it is what it is. After all, he's the one who decided to protect her. She blushes, mentioning she doesn't know how to reply, and that they never spoke much before. She asks why he decided to protect her. Yagiri initially replies he doesn't know why, but after Tomochika's insistence, he admits it was all because of her soft and juicy developed plot. She blushes and gets angry, complaining that men are all the same. Yagiri and Tomochika manage to reach the nearby city. Tomochika is happy about it, but Yagiri is feeling sleepy. They notice the guards closing on the gate and rush out to them. However, they cannot understand what the guards are saying. Still, they order them to wait until they call their lord. The lord appears, mentioning that this situation is annoying and asks if they got separated from the guys that came at noon. Tomochika gets happy as the guy can speak Japanese. However, Yagiri simply asks if the guy can let them in as they're trying to catch up with their colleagues. The guy gets annoyed, mentioning that usually people need to pay to get inside. However, he has orders to not get in the way of sage candidates. Yagiri then mentions his colleagues talking about heading to the capital and how they can get there. However, this ugly face simply tells that he won't get in their way or help them at all. Yagiri thanks him nevertheless and decides to leave. However, this trash-faced dude says that he wants Tomochika to spend the night in his house. She immediately rejects him and pulls Yagiri as she walks away. Upon getting inside the city, Yagiri asks why she ran. She replies that she was afraid that Yagiri was about to kill him. Yagiri gets confused and asks if she thinks he's a serial killer. However, she replies that she's surprised that he hasn't noticed that. Upon looking around, Tomochika gets excited because it looks like a fantasy city filled with beast folk. A fox girl named Mayuryu then approaches them, asking if they are sage candidates. She asks if they are lost, as it seems like it's their first time in the city. Tomochika gets hyped to see some cat ears, but Yagiri asks what she wants. The cat girl explains she wants to help them for free. The two get confused and ask why she would do that. Mayuryu explains she wants to get along with the sage candidate boys for two reasons. First, they have a guaranteed future, and second, they're easy to seduce. Tomochika thinks this girl has no salvation, but Mayuryu replies she doesn't want to seduce her boyfriend. She believes that the secret to building a great relationship comes from friendship. Tomochika explains they're not a couple, but Yagiri wants to know her opinion about their situation. She answers that she wants to look around the city before it gets dark. Since that's her goal, Yagiri asks Mayuryu to show them around. After Tomochika's shopping spree, she reveals that she never expected to wear this new type of clothes so casually. However, she's so blind that she doesn't notice that they're currently surrounded. Yagiri reveals that he was expecting to end up in this situation. Tomochika apologizes, mentioning that she wanted to follow Mayuryu because she looked kind. The bandits start their treats, but Yagiri protects the girl while asking if they want money. The bandits reveal they do want money, but their main goal is to get talentless sage candidates. He explains those who possess gifts usually go rampage in their city. Everyone hates them, but they cannot do anything to them. However, sage candidates who have no gifts are perfect to beat up and sell. Tomochika starts to freak out, but our Sigma Yagiri is still chilling. He replies that he understands the deal, but asks permission to kill the bandits. The bandits mock, explaining they will be the ones who will be killing them. Tamachika tries to warn Mairyu up, explaining that Yogiri is actually strong despite his looks. However, this stupid cat girl thinks this is all a bluff because two people without a sage gift are as useless as you in real life. Yet Yogiri pulls his verbal death note and orders everyone behind him to die. In an instant, everyone is down. The rest of the bandits get confused, but Yogiri continues his task, ordering the leopard dude to half die. However, the guy collapses and Yogiri realizes that it's impossible to be half dead. He decides to try something new and points at the KFC's ankle, ordering it to die. The guy collapses, but Yogiri thinks this was a mistake. He points at this bear dude's shoulder and orders it to die. The guy goes to the next world as well, and Tamachika says that Yogiri is so harsh. He reveals that he tried to go easy on them and orders this dog's eyeballs to die. The guy becomes blind, shocking everyone. Yogiri continues his onslaught, forcing Mairyu to ask who he is. Yogiri doesn't reply, thinking that it's not efficient to kill individual body parts. Mairyu tries to play the victim, asking for help as her little brothers are waiting for her to go home. Yet Yogiri simply replies that's not a reason to steal and kill people. The last guy asks if he isn't talentless, but Yogiri points his finger at them and tells them to die. However, it doesn't work. They are still alive and try to run away. Tamachika asks if he is letting them go. But Yogiri replies he didn't, he simply delayed his order. The two bandits manage to hide themselves, but the death is activated. Yogiri tells Tamachika it's time to leave, but they're stopped by some guards who want to know about the situation. Yogiri lies and explains they got lost and found everyone dead on the floor. One of the guards reveals that's a lie because she saw everyone fall out of nowhere when they were about to attack the two. Tamachika gets angry because this clearly means the guards were watching but didn't help them. The guard explains they wanted to destroy the bandits' backer as well. Yogiri understands the guards wanted to let them get sold and then track the people who bought them. The guard confirms it and tells them that Yogiri cannot do anything to them because they're protected against gifts. However, one of the guards uses his appraisal skill and reveals that neither Yogiri nor Tamachika have gifts. The girl is shocked, but that clearly means they cannot do anything to the two because they have no powers. The guy apologizes because his captain is as rude as your everyday Karen, but Yogiri doesn't mind. He asks the dude if he knows a place where they could stay the night. They take them to a huge inn mansion, which shocks Tamachika as she thinks it's a castle. Yogiri asks if she's fine with sharing a room with him to save some cash, but she's shy about it. He then decides to ask for rooms next to each other. The next morning, Yogiri notices that she seems tired. She reveals it's all due to the recent events and asks if they will catch up with the others. Yogiri explains that he met Celestina, one of the inn staff, and had her look for the other's location, prepare language translation, and some concealment items. Not only that, but Celestina created something that will enable him to charge up his console. Celestina hands them some tickets to leave the city, and Yogiri asks her to keep all the items he has. The two later depart on a train, and Tamachika's ancestor is still scared of Yogiri. Tamachika asks if he can see her ancestor, to which he reveals that he only saw her from the moment Tamachika talked about it. Tamachika then sits by his side and asks if they will be able to meet their colleagues. Yogiri replies that according to Celestina, their mates should be moving around the primeval forest to train. Suddenly, he turns to her and pushes her down. A huge explosion blows the ceiling away, confusing her. A message orders the passengers to stay put as there's a sage fighting an aggressor. Yogiri thinks they're safe as nobody is after them, but Tamachika doesn't know what's going on. They look around and see a huge mecha robot, which Yogiri realizes is the aggressor. Tamachika uses her amazing sight to tell him the sage is floating. The sage launches several attacks at the robot, but their battle is pretty even. Destroying mountains during fights, it's pretty common. Tamachika asks if Yogiri can get rid of those two, but he asks her why should he do it. She claims they're on their way, but Yogiri explains that's stupid because he could use that same reason to kill everyone who walks in front of him. She tries to explain that they could have died just now, but Yogiri says they aren't targeting them. He reveals that he has some rules to use his power, otherwise he would simply kill everyone who annoys him. She apologizes for being naive when suddenly there's a huge attack coming in their way. Luckily, the robot takes the attack. The sage complains the robot is moving and attacks with a huge ice spell. The passengers get frozen, but Yogiri manages to protect Tamachika. Tamachika calls the sage cruel, but he gets annoyed. Yogiri asks why did he attack them, but the sage tells him to kneel down and praise him like a dog. He starts insulting Yogiri, but Yogiri insults him back and thinks about killing him. The sage falls flat on the floor and Tomochika asks if he did it. He simply replies he had a good enough reason to do it. The robot approaches them, but reveals that he has no intention to fight. The robot wants to negotiate with Yogiri, promising to give him anything he wants. Tomochika realizes the robot is afraid of Yogiri, but our boy asks if there's a way to return to their world. The robot mentions he knows a way to return to the world where he came from, not where they came. Yogiri asks if the robot can take them there, but the robot refuses because his entire being is not in this world. Plus, the robot refuses to bring someone as dangerous as Yogiri to his world. He then explains that this world is at one of the lowest levels and climbing up requires a huge amount of energy and the right coordinates. Yogiri then asks the robot to give him advice on how to find the energy and coordinates to return to his world. He then asks if Tomochika wants something, but her spirit interrupts. Meanwhile, the two rest for the night in the woods where Tomochika's ancestor reveals that she turned her underwear into a katana. They walk through the forest until they reach Hanabusa City. Tomochika happily mentions that it looks like Japan, but notices that Yogiri has a poor physical condition. Yogiri, however, replies that's normal because he killed enemies on their way. She gets confused, but when looks back, notices monsters and bandits who tried to attack them. She asks that since he's tired, his power must have a limit. Yet Yogiri replies that he can use it as much as he wants, but he will feel tired after using it. They get inside the city, and the spirit notices there are barriers instead of walls. Tomochika looks around and sees the huge hotel the previous inn lady told them about. They decide to stay there and get inside, where they meet Takabana, their classmate. He's happy to see Tomochika, and she asks why he's here instead of being with the others. Takabana replies he split with them because they're inefficient with their leveling. Yet, there's a maid girl who isn't happy with Tomochika being friendly towards Takabana. The guy tells her to calm down because they're classmates. The girl shuts up, but there's another one who praises Takabana. Tomochika is confused and asks Yogiri if he knows what is this all about, but he doesn't. Takabana then introduces them to the maid girls, mentioning they're his bodyguards. There's a total of 5 girls severing this piece of trash. The 5 girls introduce themselves, but also use this chance to threaten Tomochika. She doesn't understand what is this all about, but Takabana apologizes because he's a beta who isn't strict with girls. He orders the girls to shut up and Yogiri asks Tomochika if this guy also left them behind. He mentions that he doesn't know what kind of ability Takabana has, but he seems quite confident. Yet Tomochika reveals that this loser has always been like this. He was always popular with girls and a narcissist. Yogiri is surprised, mentioning that school is more interesting than he thought. Suddenly, this trash calls this fate and invites Tomochika to become his lover. He knows this was sudden to ask, but Tomochika is shocked. The guy goes on, telling her to not worry about Yogiri. He doesn't usually accept guys, but he can give him some special treatment. Tomochika is shocked because this guy still keeps going. Even Yogiri mentions that he doesn't feel killing intent thanks to this nonsense. Tomochika asks why he is so confident and Takabana replies he has the Dominator class. In short, he can dominate everyone who's weaker than him. She's still shocked by his words and mentions that he hasn't leveled up that much when compared to the others who are training in the primeval forest. This dumbass thinks she's into him and decides to explain everything. It all started when they threw a party after completing their first mission. Four Eyes came to him and gave him some advice. Four Eyes' class is a consultant. In short, he's a master plotter and scammer. Four Eyes mentioned how everyone was avoiding Takabana because of his class and mentioned that if someone doesn't become a sage, everyone will become livestock. And that's why he tells Takabana that he should buy a large number of the cheapest level 1 servants. In short, the servants will fight for him, and if they win the battle, the opponent will become his servant, but also get the experience points. Yet Takabana mentions that his abilities don't have that information. Four Eyes reveals that his consultant class allows him to see the hidden details of others. Takabana wants to know why Four Eyes is trying to help, but our master plotter just wants to make sure that everyone has a chance to become a sage and wishes him good luck. After that story, Tomochika thinks support types are too strong in this world. Yogiri understands that while they're speaking, Takabana's number of servants and level is rising. The cocky guy confirms it and asks Tomochika again to become his lover. She rejects him, but he tells her to think about it and reply later. He leaves the place and she reveals that he's annoying. Still, Yogiri thinks it would be safer for her to be by Takabana's side when compared to him. She asks if he's trying to make her angry, but he doesn't understand her reaction. Later, Yogiri is resting on his bed while Tomochika wonders how long they're supposed to stay in that place. Suddenly, she sees some smoke on the streets. This is because the guy whom Lane told to take care of Yogiri is coming into the city and destroying everything. The guy announces that his immortal army is recruiting and that if the citizens die, they will become zombie soldiers. She decides to call Yogiri's room to wake him up, but the spirit thinks she's relying on him too much. Meanwhile, the phone rings while Yogiri dreams about his childhood. He remembers waking up to his dog licking his face and Asako telling him that breakfast was ready. He then wakes up from his dream and picks up the phone, promising to go to Tomochika's room. Upon stepping outside, he sees the corridor is empty. However, the maid is invisible and pulls out a dagger. Yogiri closes his eyes and focuses on sensing the killing intent. He manages to see the girl and finds out that she plans to target Tomochika. He pulls out his mental death note and the girl falls onto the floor. He gets inside Tomochika's room and explains there was someone outside her room to kill her. Tomochika is confused about why she would be targeted, but Yogiri simply calls the reception to say there's someone collapsed in the hallway. Tomochika asks why he did that, but he replies they would suspect them if he didn't. Meanwhile, Takebana receives an alert mentioning that his maid's signal has disappeared. But he must worry about the other monster inside this dungeon. Back at the hotel, Tomochika realizes that it was Takebana's maid and Yogiri thinks that this is bad. He tells Tomochika to prepare her stuff to leave this place. She confirms it, but he's surprised that she's really calm in this situation. Tomochika replies that she's used to seeing dead people while by his side. The spirit adds up, mentioning that humans will die anyway. Plus, her family members shouldn't be upset over something so basic. Tomochika gets angry and tells the spirit to stop talking about philosophy. They start running away, but another Takebana's servant appears, asking where they are going. Yogiri asks what she wants, but the girl casts a spell to restrain him inside an ice crystal. She happily reveals that her trash boss asked to bring Tomochika to him. Yet Yogiri simply punches the ice and gets free. The girl and Tomochika are confused because it should be easy to break it. Yet Yogiri replies that he tried to kill the ice, which worked. Tomochika is confused and asks what he means by killing the ice. The servant is in shock and starts casting more magic. Yet Yogiri kills the magic and then her staff. The girl falls to her knees and he explains that he can kill anything he thinks about. Therefore, she should be a good girl and answer some questions. She accepts and he asks if she can use magic without a staff. The girl reveals that due to her class, she can only use magic when holding a staff. Yogiri knows this means that she must have some spare ones. The girl confirms and pulls another wand from Happyland. Tomochika asks why she is hiding it there, but also tells Yogiri to stop looking. He's surprised because he didn't expect that she could use them in that way. He then talks about what she just said about taking Tomochika to Takebana and asks about the others. She answers that everyone received the same order. Suddenly, another girl is on the ceiling and tries to attack Tomochika. She quickly uses her judo skills to put the girl down. Yogiri is surprised, but the spirit mentions that Tomochika's martial art talents are awakening. However, when they properly look at the girl, they notice it's a doll. More dolls surround them, and the other girl pulls another wand from her hair, mentioning that she thought she could do this on her own. Yogiri's eyes shine, and the girl drops dead onto the floor. The girl who controls the dolls is sitting on the stairs and orders them to deal with it, but to let Tomochika live. However, Yogiri kills every doll. The girl starts to panic, and they manage to find her. She begs them to not kill her, making Tomochika feel like they're the real villains. Meanwhile, Takebana feels again that his servant is dead, and the little girl has lost her will to fight and told Yogiri and Tomochika everything. Upon hearing the conversation, he tells the other maids that Yogiri can kill anything just by thinking. They all find it hard to believe it, but Takebana thinks they should observe them first and lead them to a place where they can ambush them. Tomochika and Yogiri start walking down the stairs until they see it filled with cockroaches. She screams in fear, and when Yogiri is about to say its name, she stops him because it will traumatize her. The spirit knows Takebana is using the insects to watch over them. Tomochika asks if Yogiri can kill them, which he confirms, but the insects will reign over their heads. She refuses that idea, but he mentions they could enter her mouth and suffocate her. She imagines it and decides to get revenge on Takebana. The spirit mentions that Takebana could make the whole world their enemy. Takebana watches the situation, thinking that Yogiri cannot do anything. He thinks about using the roaches to make them scream and chase them. However, his maid says that he should be careful because they don't know about Yogiri's power. He refuses to give up and orders the roaches to kill Yogiri. They all activate the bloodlust, making Tomochika feel scared. Yogiri says they should kill Takabana because he thinks it won't take too much effort. He uses the roaches' killing intent to track Takabana's position and tells him to die. Takabana collapses on the floor, making all his servants shocked. Yet Tomochika is freaking out because he failed and the roaches are still alive. Yogiri explains his power never fails because if his enemies can reach him, he can also reach them. After all, the world won't let someone act without consequences. Tomochika notices the roaches are more active, and he explains that's because Takabana's death has set them free. She panics, but he grabs her arm and tells her to run. Meanwhile, Takabana's servants are still trying to heal him from the dead. The other one tells her they're free now and walks away. Yogiri and Tomochika then walk through an alley to leave the city, but they suddenly hear screams. Upon checking, they see the city filled with zombies. The zombies start wreaking havoc in the city and Tomochika questions what is happening. Yogiri, however, mentions the zombies are slow and it should be possible to escape if they're careful. Tomochika asks if they cannot help and Yogiri replies it will be hard to save the city. Even the spirit tells them to get out before everything gets worse. Meanwhile, the city manor complains about Masuki, who released the zombies into the city, explaining that Lane, the vampire sage, gave him the city managing rights. Masuki simply tells him to not worry because the sage candidate era is under Lane. Plus, the mayor shouldn't be worried because they fought the same battles. The mayor replies Masuki already died and became an undead, therefore he should group his zombies and leave the city. The zombie dude, however, reveals this was Lane's order. He tells the mayor to hand him the key to the city. Since it's an order, the mayor gives him the key and asks what he will be doing. However, Masuki replies it's nothing important. He then uses the speakers around the city to order his zombies to stop moving. The guy then introduces himself to every citizen and uses a huge screen to show Yogiri and Tomochika's pictures. He explains that he's searching for them and the remaining humans should bring them to the central plaza within 1 hour. If the citizens don't do it, he will make his zombies move again. At that same moment, Yogiri and Tomochika were trying to sneak outside the city. They hear everything the other guy has said, but also hear that he locked the whole city to prevent everyone from running. With this, every citizen understands they have two options, to capture Yogiri and Tomochika or to become a zombie. The mayor suddenly enters the room the other guy is speaking from, complaining about hurting the citizens. However, the guy replies that if he didn't threaten them, they would never look for the other two. Everyone around the city starts looking for the other two, which forces them to hide in alleys. Tomochika thinks humans are now way more dangerous than zombies, but Yogiri replies they must run to avoid being found. Tomochika then asks why they are being chased. Yogiri thinks about it and replies it must probably be because he killed the other sage. Suddenly, 3 girls manage to find them and promise to take the 2, even if it means killing them. Yogiri thinks this was quite fast and warns the guys that if they get close, he will kill them. One of the guys ignores him and tries to attack, forcing Yogiri to mentally death note him. The others start to panic, and Tomochika starts complaining about this being a disgusting way to carry out a promise. Yogiri replies these guys are trying to kill them, so they should also expect to be killed. He then notices the other 2 running away and thinks Masuki is only instigating this because they think Yogiri cannot kill a normal person. He reveals that he's now annoyed and thinks about going to the plaza to negotiate with Masuki. They head out to meet him, but find the place to be quite grim, as if it was Halloween. Tomochika even thinks this is the most fantasy-like stuff she has seen in this world. Upon getting close, Yogiri asks who's Masuki. The guy initially doesn't recognize them and asks if they came here because they gave up running. He calls them boring for trying to sacrifice themselves for the people, but Yogiri calls him stupid. Tomochika starts to panic after hearing those words, and Masuki asks what Yogiri wants because if he kills him, the game is over. Yogiri replies he wants to get on a train and go to the royal capital, therefore it would be kind of Masuki if he removes the barrier around the city. Masuki is shocked to hear those words and gets angry. He starts complaining, mentioning that Yogiri is in a bad position to negotiate right now. Yogiri realizes that's true and thinks he must have something to offer. Therefore, he simply says that he will let Masuki live even though he should that would be a bad thing. Masuki gets even angrier, calling Yogiri crazy and asking if he wants to die right now. He orders his Immortal Core army to attack Yogiri, explaining that Yogiri cannot kill something that is already dead. But as you expect, our boy orders them to die, and they all collapse. Masayuki is shocked because he cannot understand what's going on, and the mayor uses this chance to say he's not involved in anything. Yet Masayuki wants to know how the dead just died. Yogiri replies he also doesn't know about it, but since the undead were moving, it pretty much means they were alive. Tamachika then complains about how Yogiri ignored what just happened, but just answered it. Masayuki still could not believe what had just happened, but Yogiri gave the biggest Chad answer. He's the one who decides what's dead. In short, if it moves, it's alive. If they stop, they're dead. Masayuki gets angry and calls out his master Lane, but Yogiri simply asks what he is going to do since his comrades are already dead. The guy gets down and refuses to accept Yogiri's instant death ability. He starts transforming into a mix of Batman with werewolf, but Yogiri tells him to die. Tamachika complained she wanted to see the transformation first. Yet Yogiri doesn't understand why he should do it. She then asks what they are going to do now because they cannot negotiate with the dead undead. However, Yogiri says that's not a problem and approaches the mayor. The guy panics and begs to stay alive, promising that he just wants his city to stay safe. Yogiri simply replies they just did this to protect themselves. The mayor then explains this is all because Sage Lane ordered Masayuki to kill the two. Upon hearing that name, Tamachika questions if Sion isn't the real name. The mayor then explains that Sion is also a sage, but this city is under Lane's control. Tamachika is confused because they came to this world because of Sion, and now another sage wants to kill them. The mayor explains he doesn't know much about it, but he doesn't usually interfere with sage candidates. The spirit then calls out Yogiri, but he replies that there's some sort of spiritual manipulation heading to that area. Suddenly, Yogiri starts feeling killing intent all around the plaza. Every citizen gears near, making everyone confused. The mayor then checks Masayuki's body, explaining that if they're using spirit magic, then the city barriers should keep them safe. He tries to activate the key, but it doesn't work. He then realizes that Lane is the one controlling the barrier. Tamachika asks if Yogiri cannot kill the source controlling the citizens. He replies this is different than Takabana's case. He starts killing everyone who tries to attack them, and people fall one by one. He feels like this is just a test like they used to do to him when he was a kid. Yogiri then notices the mayor in a panic to see his citizens die in front of him. Yogiri notices the killing intent gets stronger, but she then notices the dark aggressor. The huge aggressor destroys everything he passes through, and they begin to panic. Yet, at the same time, Lane reveals that since her clones know nothing about Yogiri, they have no killing intent toward him. He then orders his clones to attack the city when the aggressor either tries to attack or dies. Tamachika then asks Yogiri if he can kill the aggressor. He replies yes, which shocks her because she didn't expect it. The mayor begs Yogiri to save the city, but he has a bad feeling about doing it. Nevertheless, he orders the aggressor to die, and while it's taking effect, he notices the city being attacked from the air. He saves Tamachika from being hit, but she wonders if this attack came from the aggressor. Yogiri reveals he killed the aggressor, however, this attack blended with the darkness's killing intent to remain unnoticed. He realizes this attack has no target, but the goal is to destroy everyone in it. He thinks everything until now was just a test, but Tamachika tells him to stop enjoying his new pillow. They then get up and Yogiri explains he doesn't know what's happening. Upon looking at the sky, Tamachika explains she sees several women in a dress raining form the sky. The mayor realizes that's Lane and Tamachika asks if Yogiri can do anything to her. He explains that he cannot do anything because she isn't aiming at him. Plus, they're all moving so fast that he cannot find them. In short, this all planned to deal with his skill. Since all women look the same, Tamachika asks how many Lanes exist. The mayor then reveals they're clones because Lane has super regeneration abilities. Upon hearing that, Yogiri reveals he can deal with it, but it would be easier if she aimed at him. The mayor then brings out a hologram of the city and explains there's a pattern to the attacks. It doesn't attack the same place twice, and the attacks aren't also made close to each other. The spirit even calls Lane dumb because she's trying to make it random, but she made it consistent instead. Tamachika thinks they can use this information to predict where will be the next attack. The mayor quickly realizes where it will be, and Yogiri says he will be heading there. The mayor then reveals he will help him with his teleportation ability. Yet Tamachika also wants to come. Yogiri tells her to hide, but says she's the only one who can see everything. The spirit also wants to help, and they decide to teleport away. Yogiri and Tamachika hold hands, and she leads him to where the clone will hit. He orders the clone to die, and the spirit uses an ability to create a shield around them. After the impact, the shield is retrieved and Tamachika is relieved because she thought she would die. Yogiri then notices something on Tamachika's hand and asks what it is. In short, the spirit used its power to combine some of Tamachika's underwear with the power of the previous aggressor that can transform into a shelter. Yet, the spirit is worried because defeating the clones won't help in the endgame. Yogiri, however, replies it's all fine. The clones then fall and disappear, making Lane question how immortal vampires can die. Her servant tells her they shouldn't target Yogiri, but Lane replies she just needs to make new clones with different settings. Suddenly, there's a strange feeling in her body, and she realizes her true body, which was hidden in another dimension, is dead. She then goes on a bungee jumping without rope, but thinks this is how she will save the girl. She suddenly disappears and Tamachika realizes there aren't any attacks coming. With this, they return to the mayor to get everything ready and escape. Back in the city, the mayor thanks them for their help and gets them a car, telling them to be careful. Upon getting inside, Tamachika complains that Yogiri is playing games instead of driving. He explains that's because he always crashes his car into walls when he plays games, therefore he cannot drive. With that, Tamachika is ready to drive, and the spirit reveals that her family has the skills to drive anything. While driving through a canyon, Tamachika wakes him up to tell him about the boulder in their path. She mentions how he was asleep for the whole time, but he explains that it's because he used too much power in the last city. Yogiri then asks the most important question, why are they even going to the capital? Tamachika is shocked because he could have asked that question before they left. Yogiri explains their goal to return to Japan, and to do that, they must talk to Sion. But he thinks there's a better way to talk to her without going to the capital. Tamachika replies their classmates are all going there. She then starts driving back, hoping that she can find another route to take them to the capital, but they suddenly bump into something. Upon checking outside, they see a dragon who prepares to attack them, but Yogiri orders it to die. Tamachika feels relieved until she notices a lot more dragons flying their way. Yogiri realizes they're in their territory. The dragons prepare to breathe fire and Tamachika grabs his arm, asking him to do something. Since the dragons have killing intent, Yogiri orders them all to die. The dragons start raining down, making Tamachika even compare it to a dragon insecticide commercial. She sighs in relief until she notices they're being covered by a big shadow. Upon looking up, she sees a huge golden thunder dragon in front of them. She starts freaking out, thinking she will be struck by lightning, but Yogiri reveals he doesn't sense any killing intent. The dragon looks at them and tells them they have passed. Tamachika is confused by those words, but the dragon turns around and flies away in panic. Yet Yogiri yells at it to wait and asks why the dragons attacked them if they can understand them. The dragon ignores him, but Yogiri promises that he will do the same thing he did to the other dragons. Turns out the huge dragon is actually a little girl who's shaking in fear. She knew she should have flown away without talking. Tamachika is confused about her new appearance, and the spirit reveals it happens a lot in parallel worlds. Yogiri asks why the girl attacked them. The girl explains she was trying to see if they were qualified to meet the Swordmaster. Yogiri and Tamachika are confused by those words. The girl asks if they haven't come to see the Sword Saint. They respond they couldn't give less of a cat because all they want is to get to the capital. The girl explains the Sword Saint is in this canyon and that if they meet them, they could get a gift. In short, she's only here to test people who want to meet him. However, our duo still couldn't care more about it. The little girl goes on to say how great the sword dude is, mentioning he can rival the sages. With that, Yogiri thinks he must have some information on how to return to their original world. Yet Tamachika thinks they shouldn't take a detour because they're already lost. The lowly uses this chance to propose a deal. She will guide them to the capital, but first, they must meet the sword dude. They accept the deal, and she introduces herself as Attila. After a quick drive, they reach a spot where several people are gathered, waiting for the sword dude. Everyone starts complaining about them cheating for coming in a vehicle. Yogiri is confused about everyone's words, but Attila explains that today is the selection for the Knight of the Holy King. In short, if someone becomes a Knight of the Holy King, they can become the Sword Saint disciple. Therefore, everyone here is aiming to become the next Sword Saint. Another guy looks at them and says they've been disqualified despite working so hard. Yet, another voice says the selection hasn't started, therefore nobody has been disqualified. Everyone then sees the sword saint. The old man then gives everyone their first trial, which is a battle royal to the death, until he tells them to stop. Tamachika cannot believe the old geezer, but Yogiri asks the old guy if he can leave. Attila is confused, but the old man creates a rule that if Yogiri leaves the place, everyone will be disqualified. Everyone starts killing each other while Yogiri and Tamachika watch. A random group suddenly targets them, and since Yogiri has no other option, he decides to kill them. Yet, a random dude comes forth, promising to protect them. The random guy calls everyone a fool, mentioning they're all misunderstanding the sword dude's intention. He thinks this is a test to determine if they have the right personality to become a knight of the Holy King. Tamachika thinks he's a decent person, but the spirit mentions he's skilled. The guy deals with multiple opponents at the same time, yet he doesn't have the intention to kill them. Some random guys start casting magic towards Yogiri, but he simply orders them to die. The random dude is confused about why they fell, but concludes it must have been the old guy punishing the lawless ones. Since everyone had given up on fighting them, he turned to the duo asking them to stay for a while longer while he protected them. Suddenly, the two hear a voice asking for help on the ground. They see a guy who was sliced in half trying to crawl and asking for a stone. She sees a rainbow-colored stone next to her and places it on his hand. The guy then crushes the stone and somehow regenerates his body. He thanks her for the help, but the sword guy tells them to stop and follow him because their numbers are lower now. He walks into the forest, and Tamachika wonders what they should do. Attila begs them to stay and participate. Yogiri is confused because she just wanted them to meet the sword saint. She then explains that if her recommendation becomes the knight of the Holy King, she will become their servant. Yogiri thinks this is becoming troublesome, but since they haven't gotten any info, he will follow along. As they move, the other guys introduce themselves as Rick and the crystal guy as Lionel. He explains he was forced to accompany his friend to this trial. Suddenly, they see the other participants vanishing, but Attila tells them to not worry because that's an invisible barrier. Upon getting inside, they see a huge tower, but the spirit orders Tamachika to leave this place because she senses some evil miasma from the tower. Suddenly, Lionel starts throwing up and the spirit explains he got hit by the miasma. The spirit explains Tamachika is only feeling fine because she's being protected. Meanwhile, Yogiri is looking around and notices something. Lionel uses this stone and gets resistance to the miasma. Yogiri then asks Attila if it's fine to get inside the tower, but she isn't there. Nick explains that only people taking the trial are allowed inside. They get inside the tower and take an elevator the highest floor. There, the old guy tells them to look down. They see a huge energy ball, and the old man explains that's the end of the world. Upon looking down, Tamachika sees monsters frozen in time during a huge battle. She notices there's a man in black and a woman in white at the center. She tells Yogiri the woman's sword is piercing the two, and Rick explains that's the Holy King and the devil. The old guy explains his job is to guard this place. Suddenly, a girl named Frederica thinks this will all end if they beat the things inside the ball. Lionel calls her name, revealing that she's the friend who dragged him here. She tells the old man that his duty will end today and throws a huge fireball inside the energy ball. She's confident it's all over now, but the attack barely moves upon getting inside the energy ball. The old man explains that time flows slowly inside the barrier, therefore it will take some 100 years before it reaches the Dark Lord. The girl is shocked, but the old man points to another girl, explaining she will give the details of their trial. She reveals their goal is to go from the roof to the first floor of the tower within 24 hours. A girl asks if they can jump down from the roof, but the other replies they must first accumulate 100 points inside the tower. The duo notices they haven't seen her before, but notice that some other participants have been added. Tamachika ignores it and asks if Yogiri cannot kill the Dark God with his ability. However, she realizes that he has no reason to do it. She then looks at him, but he seems nervous. He then reveals he tried to kill the source of the miasma, and turns out he killed the Dark God. They then decide to get inside the tower to reach the bottom floor and leave. The other two try to follow them, but Lionel's friend tells him to stop. She asks for his special stones to restore her magic power. He hands her a stone while explaining that it can only be used by him. Since she cannot use it, she throws the stone and complains about him following her despite being useless. Rick advises them to move on, and once inside, they see several participants collapsed. He mentions the tower should be filled with monsters and traps. However, it should be easy to go through them because they're in last place. He tells them to avoid the missing traps, but Lionel immediately steps in one. He gets stabbed by a javelin, but quickly heals himself with a crystal. Tamachika advises him to always hold a crystal in his hand. They force their way into the door, but find a girl dressed as a maid inside. Rick recognizes her as Therese and asks what's going on. He starts attacking with her threads, claiming that a Knight of the Holy King must be the strongest person in the world. Tamachika watches Rick using his shield to block the attacks and thinks that despite his strength, Therese is much stronger. She's just playing around while Rick needs to try his best just to block the attacks. However, Yogiri decides to ruin the fun and orders Therese to die. She falls flat onto the ground, shocking everyone. Yet Yogiri changes the topic and asks if the hand he just found belongs to Lionel. Despite the initial shock, Tamachika starts looking around and finds him on the floor about to die and begging to have the crystal back. The group later continues and reaches floor 98. There they meet a girl who explains this is a safe lodging area for everyone to rest. Yogiri uses this chance to suggest that the group split up because they could face a trial where they must have to kill each other. Rick agrees, mentioning he never expected this trial to be so cruel. He asks if they will be safe, and Yogiri reveals that as long as he's with Tamachika. Lionel also wants to wait until midnight to replenish his crystals. With this decision, Rick decides to leave while Lionel asks for a room to rest. Tamachika and Yogiri are left alone, and he asks if she wants to rest. However, there's a problem. They only have a room available. Our boy takes the room just to find a couple's bed in it. Tamachika reminds him about her spirit ancestor always being present, but the spirit tells her to have fun while she hides inside the wall. Tamachika's worries start to grow as she sees Yogiri bluntly taking off his clothes and changing into his pajamas. He then steps into the bed and lays down like a brick. Tamachika cannot even believe this guy simply went to sleep while in the same room as her. The spirit hurries one of the two to wake up. Tamachika is the one who opens her eyes first, just to notice Yogiri enjoying his wildest dreams. She quickly gets up and the spirit starts begging for help. Tamachika notices the spirit has half of its body inside the wall and asks what's going on. The spirit explains that she noticed Yogiri clinging onto Tamachika while asleep and tried to give them some privacy. However, she ended up like this after becoming curious and trying to peek. Tamachika starts complaining, but the spirit reveals the tower is drawing the souls of the dead into a single place. Therefore, the walls and floors are trying to absorb her. Yogiri finally wakes up, and the spirit asks if he can help her. Upon hearing it, Yogiri tries to kill the absorption function of the tower. The spirit is finally being absorbed into the wall, and Tamachika says goodbye. Yogiri then touches the wall to narrow down the target and activates his skill. The spirit manages to get out of the wall and wonders why they are trying to collect the souls of the dead. Yogiri thinks this trial has some hidden objective. He tells Tamachika to be prepared because he will kill anyone who acts hostile without even asking anything. She's confused because that's what he usually does. Yogiri explains he's trying to avoid killing as much as possible. However, the other participants will try to kill them, therefore he cannot hold back anymore. Tamachika thinks that's too late to say because she's already prepared. She then surprises him by stating that he's been using his power to save her. Therefore, him using his power is the same as her killing someone. She doesn't think it's good to complain when all he does is protect her. She still tells him to be moderate, making Yogiri blush. He turns around mentioning he's hungry and they call for the room service. Yogiri and Tamachika are making good progress inside the tower, but he doesn't feel it's fair to kill all traps and riddles. Suddenly, a random dude appears and tells him to stop cheating. He explains that he's the one who built this tower and that he can appear anywhere he wants. Tamachika complains that's also cheating, but the guy mentions he had a hard time thinking about traps just for someone to appear and destroy everything. Yogiri explains they just want to leave the tower, but replies they cannot leave. He reveals this tower exists to maintain the barrier that seals the Dark God. Therefore, Yogiri cannot destroy it. Yogiri tries to make a deal. If he lets them leave, nothing will happen. However, the guy doesn't believe him because he could be one of the Dark God's pawns. The guy finally introduces himself as Iglesia the High Wizard. He tries to give Yogiri some choices, but our boy tells him to die. Tamachika gets shocked and asks if this guy isn't someone important. Yogiri replies the guy was about to kill them and that they should move on. Suddenly, the Swordmaster notices several alerts in the tower system, revealing the soul path was broken. Not only that, but the traps and riddles are being destroyed without activating. Meanwhile, our duo manages to reach some sort of arena where they see two people fighting. They then notice a guy sitting on a throne with two other girls standing next to him. He tells the rabbit girl that his opponent's attacks are trash, and she thinks he's trying to encourage her. Tomochika continues to watch the fight, and the spirit asks what they will do. Yugiri thinks that's simple. This fight has nothing to do with them, and therefore they will just advance quickly. Yet Tomochika notices the door is just behind the guy. The guy, however, tells the opponent to get serious. She decides to follow his advice and reveals herself to be a half-demon. The girl promises to finish this quickly before the Swordmaster finds her identity. She combines magic with her sword and attacks the rabbit girl. Yet, the rabbit dropped her weapon and started to punch the other girl. Turns out, the rabbit girl is focused on close combat instead of swords. Tomochika thinks this is never going to end, and Yugiri decides to ask the guy to let me pass through. The guy on the throne asks who he is, but Yugiri simply replies they won't be getting in his way. Yet, the guy refuses to let them pass because his disciples don't have enough points yet. Yugiri still doesn't think they should be fighting because he and Tomochika only have 6 points combined. The guy freaks out, mentioning that's a reason why they should fight. Yugiri dismisses it because he doesn't want to collect points, he just wants to leave. Yet, the guy claims he's enjoying this trial and won't let anyone abandon it. Yugiri then confirms with the other girl, and she replies that he can do whatever he wants. The guy on the throne thinks this is a chance to watch a 3-on-3 fight. If Yugiri wins, he will let them pass. Tomochika starts to freak out, mentioning how awful Yugiri's negotiating abilities are. He tries to explain people just don't listen to him. The half-demon is worried about the other girl's strength because the rabbit is also strong. Yet, the guy reveals the rabbit is actually his weakest apprentice. He introduces his girls and then reveals that he wants to keep the half-demon and Tomochika for himself. He orders his girls to kill Yugiri and let the rest live. Yet, they all fall to the floor after Yugiri orders them to die. Since they won, Yugiri and Tomochika start walking away, but the guy refuses to give up. He's about to make a move, but Yugiri thinks about his death. Tomochika notices it, but doesn't say anything. As they prepare to live, the half-demon girl asks if Yugiri is the one who killed everyone. He confirms it, and she begs him for his help. Yugiri is unsure of what to do, but Tomochika tells him to at least hear the request. Theodosia introduces herself to Tomochika and Yugiri. She tells them she wants to find her sister because she heard that her people were being held hostage at the tower. Tomochika thinks that Theodosia is asking for their assistance, but Theodosia tells her their assistance may look like rebellion against the Swordmaster. Yugiri tells her the Swordmaster already thinks he's against him because of the way he's thrashing the tower. He tells Theodosia his ability would be useless in finding her sister, but they can search alongside her. Theodosia tells him she would appreciate any help he can offer. He asks her if she has any idea where they can start the search, and she tells him underground would be a good place to start. She tells them she can faintly feel the presence of her people. Lionel, Rick, and Frederica enter the same level as the duo, and Theodosia tries to remain unseen. Frederica is scolding Lionel for wasting their time, and Rick tries to calm her down. Tomochika is pleased to see that Rick and Lionel are safe. Tomochika looks around, and she recognizes the room from a previous encounter. The Sword Master Urabe turns back to look at the participants. He sees that just 17 of them have passed so far, and he's about to proclaim them as knights, but he's interrupted because there's an emergency. His assistants tell him that the tower has fallen silent, and they're having difficulty maintaining the first barrier. They're still telling him about the problems affecting the tower when a bright light suddenly blinds them all. After a while, the light dissipates, and they look up to see a purple portal going through the barrier. Urabe's assistants keep giving a situation report, and Urabe gets ready for a battle. A demon suddenly descends from the portal. Yugiri, Tomochika, and Theodosia are going down some spiral stairs, but it feels like it's unending. The spirit tells Tomochika that a barrier could be tempering with the space. Yugiri figures out that there could be an important room at the end of the staircase. They go further down, and Theodosia can sense more of her people's magic. Tomochika tells Yugiri to do something about the barrier, but he tells her he can't because it could be Theodosia's people who put it up. Suddenly, they hear a scream which pierces through the barrier. Yugiri is thankful to whoever spared them the effort of taking the barrier down. A blue suddenly apparition passes through Tomochika, and she becomes frightened. Yugiri asks her why she's frightened all of a sudden, and she tells him she felt like a blade demon just passed through her whole body. Theodosia sensed something and opened up a stone door on the side of the stair wall. She looks into the room and she can't believe her eyes. The room is filled with containers holding. Yogiri joins her at the door and he tells different specimens Tomochika to wait outside because he doesn't want her to see what's in the room. Theodosia walks up to the container and Yogiri asks her if her people are in there. She tells him those are her people and she's shocked to find them in such a state. She's somewhat relieved her sister is not in one of the tubes. Yogiri figures out that they were put in such conditions to strip them of their magic powers, and Theodosia decides to put them out of their misery. She breaks the glass jar and they leave the room. Tomochika asks Yogiri what their next line of action should be, and he tells her they need to go back up first before he can decide. He asks Theodosia what she'll be doing, and she tells him she'll avenge her people by taking the Sword Master's life. Yogiri, Tomochika, and Theodosia emerge from the stairwell and Tomochika can see that the other idiots are in a bad situation. The goddess decided to break the core and bring her darling back to life. She crushes the core and the barrier breaks open. The Divine King steps in to put an end to the demon god. Theodosia uses that distraction to take down the Sword Master. The goddess is still in shock at her darling's demise, and the sword monster uses that opponent to stab her with his sword. The monster disappears and Lionel immediately goes over to heal the goddess. She gets back to her feet and begins acting like a crazed goddess. The demon goes to pick up the demon god, trying to get him to regain consciousness. He remembers that his god requires human sacrifices and tells the demons to present all the humans to the demon god for consumption. The Divine King decides to protect the human and Yogiri decides to protect Tomochika and Theodosia. He tells the main demon to die and all the demons follow suit. Theodosia asks Yogiri if it's okay to leave the goddess as she is, and he tells her he won't attack the goddess because she bears no hostility towards them. Suddenly, a girl arrives at the tower dragging a boy behind her. She asks Rick for Yogiri's location, and he tells her it wasn't a good time for reunions because of the goddess. She analyzes him and tells him he has become a sword master, and he recalls the former sword master's words. She tells him his sword can put an end to the goddess. The Divine King tells him the barrier won't last much longer, so he decides to take down the goddess. The girl asks for Yogiri once again, but the boy with her doesn't want to meet Yogiri again. Suddenly, he notices Tomochika's silhouette, and the girl figures out that Yogiri is standing beside her. She analyzes him, and she can't believe his stats. She's so mind-blown she becomes nauseous. She sees that Yogiri is the culmination of the fate of the world in the shape of a man. Tomochika recognizes the boy and asks him why he's at the tower. He tells her he was brought there against his will. She barfs, but she tells them she would be fine after she gets some rest. She tells Yogiri she came to deliver the boy to him, but Yogiri tells her he doesn't want him. She decides to dispose of the boy, but he's tired of being treated like trash, so she abandons him. Yogiri takes a census of the humans left after the battle, and Rick asks Theodosia the reason for her actions. She tells him she did it to avenge her people. Rick tells her he's the new sword master, and she asks him if he's going to continue in the evil ways of his predecessor. Yogiri tells her they need to check underground, and he promises to help her get revenge. Rick thinks that Yogiri is powerless, but the Divine King tells him only Yogiri had the power to defeat the demon god. The Divine King thanks him for his services, and Rick wonders what Yogiri is made of. He asks him what he plans to do next, and Yogiri tells them they'll be heading to the capital. They all decide to go to the capital for one reason or the other, including Theodosia. Theodosia tells them the name of her sister, and they are both familiar with the name. They decided to point her in the direction of her sister's last known location. The Divine King also decides to head to the capital to see if his bloodline hasn't died out. Rick suggests they travel together, but Yogiri tells him he only travels with Tomochika. Rick gives them maps and pendants to keep them out of trouble, and they all part ways, leaving the boy behind. Tomochika looks at Yogiri as he sleeps in her car. Makomoko tells her she should just spend the rest of her life with him, and she's surprised her spirit can tell what she's thinking. Makomoko likes Yogiri's looks so much that she's eager to inject some of him into their bloodline. Tomochika tells her spirit that she has to let Yogiri make his own choice. Yogiri wakes up and Tomochika tries to keep her conversation with her spirit a secret. She wonders what they'll do now that they're in front of the royal capital. Mokomoko informs her that they are being surrounded by soldiers. The lead security guard tells them to step out of the vehicle, and Tomochika hopes they don't get arrested. Yogiri tells her they'll fight back if that happens, and Tomochika knows it won't be much of a fight. The chief guard introduces himself as Torx, and he tells them their vehicle belongs to the Immortal Core. Yugiri tells them they're not in the Immortal Core. He tells him they got the vehicle from the Mayor Ryuta, and Tamachika can see that Torx doesn't believe them. Yugiri tells him they're candidates for the Sage of Sion, and they come to do something like a trial. Torx decides to appraise their gifts, but Tamachika is skeptical about letting him do that. Yugiri tells her to trust in Celestina, and a soldier appraises them. Torx looks at the result, and he sees that they are Sage candidates, but he still doesn't trust them because he knows the results can be forged. Yugiri shows him an amulet, and they immediately go on their knees. Tamachika asks him what the amulet is, and he tells her Rick told him to show that to whoever holds them up in the royal capital. He gives Tamachika her amulet, and he tells her it's engraved with the royal family crest. Torx is about to let them through, but David, who is the youngest in the royal family, tells them the amulet means two things. Firstly, they are Rick's acquaintances, and secondly, they are knights of the Divine King. He tells them the amulet doesn't allow for lawlessness, and Torx tells him not to be rude. David asks Torx to show him the holy sword he received from the Sword Master, since he's a knight of the Divine King. Yugiri tells him he didn't receive a holy sword, and David can't believe that Rick is a sword master. He tells Yugiri to back up his title with his swordsmanship. He tells him he can't lose to someone like him who's skillless with the sword since he's a knight of the king. Tamachika wonders if they should turn back, but Makomoko urges her to fight. Tamachika knows that she can't beat opponents with a high fantasy level. Makomoko tells her that David's fantasy level is low. Yugiri tells her to give it a shot, and he assures her he'll take care of things if they get dicey. They begin the battle, and Yugiri notices that Tamachika's sword style is unorthodox. Makomoko tells him the family style is to mislead opponents with their movement. Yugiri thinks they're having a stare down, but Makomoko tells him Tamachika is already moving. She's hiding her left leg so David can't see her move, and she's also waving her sword back and forth to make David misjudge the distance. Tamachika suddenly throws her sword into the air, rushes past David, and hits him with a low blow. Yugiri is surprised by her moves. Torx declares her the winner, and the guards are astonished by her moves. After the fight, Yugiri touches the castle walls and sees that it's enchanted. David tells him the walls were built by an ancient wizard, and they can withstand any attacks. David is surprised to find out that Yugiri knows the wizard. Tamachika wonders why he's tagging along with them, and he tells her he wants to be their guide. They enter the castle, and Tamachika notices a lot of martial artists. David tells her they are explorers who will challenge the underworld. Tamachika is surprised that an underworld exists. David tells her a dark lord rules the underworld, and his spawns were trying to escape. Yugiri tells him he doesn't have to show them around anymore since they're close to their destination. David leaves them, and Tamachika thinks that Yugiri was a bit rude. He tells her they have to discuss meeting their classmates. Tamachika thinks they need to come up with an excuse for escaping the bus, but Yugiri tells her she first needs to decide if she'll forgive them or not. They go to see the king, and Yugiri is surprised by the number of people present. The king begins addressing them, but Shinya, a sage candidate, challenges the king. Tamachika can't believe he's that dumb. The king tells him this is not the first time a sage candidate has challenged, and he immediately puts him in his place. The candidates are surprised that the Eroge Master's ability didn't save Shinya. The king tells them to be quiet. He tells them they need to accomplish a huge achievement to become sages. The king addresses the candidates in front of him. He tells them if they can travel to the world underneath and conquer the Dark Lord, the sages would acknowledge that as a great achievement. But he's convinced the candidates lack the requirements to achieve such a feat, but he has to keep to his end of the deal. He tells them they'll prepare a base for them, and he tells them to always remember that the royal family can cause the gift to weaken. He tells Shinya his finger will reattach when there's enough distance between them, and he leaves the room. Yugiri wonders what they should do, and Tamachika calls out to her classmates. They're all surprised to see her alive, but she's pissed that nobody acknowledged Yugiri. While some of her classmates expressed their worry about her, some were not happy to see her alive and well. Yazaki tells Yugiri and Tamachika that he didn't do wrong by leaving them behind. Yugiri is indifferent about his betrayal, but Tamachika is pissed. She doesn't want to complain because it'll just irritate her even more. She asks Yazaki if he thinks their presence in the castle is bad. He's about to answer when Sora cuts in telling him they should help each other since they have such few allies in the world. Yugiri doesn't recognize her, and Tamachika tells him she's a famous idol in the entertainment industry. Yazaki tells her he doesn't trust Yugiri and Tamachika, and Sora understands his distrust because he would seek revenge if he was in their shoes. The boys go to their dorm, and Yuyugo complains about their movement restrictions. Ehara realizes that Yogiri doesn't recognize them, and they both introduce themselves as the losers of the class. Yuyugo is surprised Yogiri doesn't recognize him, though they've spoken a lot. He tells Ehara Yogiri's insect hunter class makes him a loser because he can only kill bugs. Yogiri asks them about their abilities, and he finds out Yuyugo has the cook class while Ehara has the reading class. Someone knocks and Yuyugo gets the door. He's surprised to see Fukai, who requests an audience with Yogiri, and he tells Yogiri he wants to talk about Lord Akakushi. He introduces himself to Yogiri as a death god, and he tells Yogiri he doesn't have to shoulder the responsibility as the taker of souls anymore. Yogiri wonders why Fukiya came to their dorm, and Fukiya tells him he was never allowed to get close to him to look him in the eye, though he was told to keep tabs on him. He immediately rips out his right eye, and he tells Yogiri the eye can detect the supernatural, but it lost its powers when he got close to Yogiri. He stands up to leave, and Yogiri is surprised that's all he has to say. Tomochika takes the girls to meet Yogiri, and they go out for a conversation. As soon as they step out, Ryoka apologizes to Yogiri, and she tells Carol to apologize too, but she's adamant. Carol is surprised to see Ryoka acting so erratic when she's usually so calm. Yogiri realizes they know about him, and Carol tells him she's from the agency while Ryoka is from the institute and Fukai is from the cult. She tells him they were sent to keep an eye on him, and Yogiri didn't expect to have 3 babysitters. Yogiri asks Carol for more information. Carol tells Yogiri that Sora uses her vow powers on students to prevent them from using the skills. They were fine with the 3 Oroge nobles as long as they weren't stopping time, but they weren't sure if they were using their X-ray vision skill. Carol tells them Sato became the leader because Yazaki couldn't get them together. Yogiri realizes that whoever breaks Sora's vow loses their life. Carol wonders why Yogiri met with them, and he tells her he wants to talk to Sion the Sage because he's sure she has some information about how they'll get home. Carol realizes that going home is the normal thing to do, and Ryoka thought they had no choice but to become sages. Tomochika wonders if going home with everyone's help is the right move, and Yogiri tells her they should go for the great achievement because going home will cause chaos. Carol and Ryoka tell Yogiri they're on his side. The boys go underground, and Yogiri wonders why David is accompanying them. David tells him he can suppress a low-level demon's power easily because of his royal family's ability. Haruto wonders if David can also seal their powers, and David tells him that he can. He decides to just guide them to where the demons reside. A 4-armed monkey attacks Yogiri, and he does his best to suppress his murderous intent. He decides to use his sword to take it down. The boys commend his prowess, but one of them wonders how he was able to bring the monster down with a single blow when he moves like an amateur. Tomochika asks Yogiri what he does during the day, and he tells her he plays games. She's pissed she has to take down monsters all day. Yogiri asks about the underworld, and she tells him they've cleared the 5th floor and would explore the 6th the next day. Yogiri reminds her that there's a dark god on the 7th level, and he wonders if it'll be easy to take down. Carol tells him they'll barely make their 1-month deadline. Yogiri is optimistic Sion would show up even if they lose. Yogiri asks about Shinya, and Ryoka tells him Ayaka took his life, and she swore to take the lives of everyone in their class. Yogiri welcomes Tomochika back to the hideout, and she wonders why he's just sitting about. He wonders if she thinks he's just lazing about. He decides to demonstrate something to her by taking off a few petals from the rose flowers in a vase. Tomochika wonders what he's doing, and he tells her he's learning to tone down his power. He decided to learn how to tone it down because he knew he'll need to tone it down to get information from the sage. Tomochika wonders if he's done anything besides that, and he tells her he took a stroll around the city while eating some food. Tomochika wonders why he's having a good time in that world on his own, but he informs her that he was targeted while walking around the city. She tells him that isn't a good thing, and he tells her he needs her help. Tomochika wonders what Yogiri wanted her help for since they're just walking through the city. He tells her he wants to be targeted without taking the life of whoever is targeting him. Yogiri asks her to use her good eyesight to help him spot the enemy. He notices she looks a bit angry, and she tells him she'll tell him about her mood if he buys her lunch. Yogiri can see she just wants him to treat her to lunch. A sniper who's targeting Yogiri begs a woman to let him go, but she tells him to hurry up and take the shot. He begs her to spare his life, and she tells him he has to take down his target to be free of his pains. The man pulls the trigger, but he loses his life immediately. The lady tells her operator to aim for Tomochika next. Tomochika and Yogiri arrive at a destination, only to see it in rubbles, and Tomochika is pissed by Ayaka's handwork. They decide to visit somewhere else, but Tomochika is suddenly targeted and Yogiri saves her. The operator decides to continue with that strategy, but Yogiri tells him he's coming to meet him, which shocks him to his core. Tamachika can see that someone was watching them, and Tamachika wonders what they should do. Mokomoko tells her she has the source of the waves, and Tamachika wonders if it's the waves that are making her erratic. The operator wonders if Yogiri knows his location. He decides to run away, but his escape helicopter suddenly fails, and he jumps out. Tamachika suddenly attacks him mid-air, and Yogiri appears before him. Yogiri asks him not to run, and he obeys, which makes Yogiri realize that the operator knows about his power. The operator tries to feign ignorance, but Mokomoko shows him the spirit he sent to attack them. The operator wonders how the Princess of Spirits lost, and Mokomoko tells him no spirit can defeat her. Mokomoko also shows him that she defeated the King of Spirits, which pisses the operator off. He summons a wolf spirit, but Yogiri takes it out instantly with his death skill. He forms a pact with Yama, the Queen of the Dead World, but then he tries to stop it, but it's too late. Yogiri takes her out easily. The woman, who is a clone, comes out of nowhere to protect the operator by attacking Yogiri, but Tamachika saves him. Yogiri approaches the clone, called Inju, and he deactivates her. Tamachika wonders who she is, and Yogiri promises to explain later. He asks Ryosuke, the operator, to spill all the information he knows. Yogiri interrogates Ryosuke, and he tells him everything he knows. He promises to leave Yogiri alone, but Yogiri tells him he's going to lose his life since he can create as many Inju clones as he wants with his ability. Ryosuke begs for his life, but Yogiri takes it anyway. Yogiri explains that Inju is a friend he used to play with when he was little, and Tamachika wonders if she's a robot. Yogiri tells her the robot was modeled after Inju and it was made to take his life. Yogiri tells her he wants Inju to rest forever, and she misunderstands him. He notices she looks sad, and he tells her Inju is still alive and well. Tamachika wonders why he was talking about letting her rest, and he tells her he was referring to the robot. Tamachika is happy. She doesn't have to fight the clone of someone who has lost her life. Later in the day, Sora informs them that their class is down to 18 students because Ayaka has taken down 8 of them. They are surprised that no one was able to defeat Ayaka. Sora tells them Ayaka is able to win because she is singling out her victims. She informs the class that they have been asked to leave the kingdom immediately, and they wonder why the kingdom is going against the sage's orders. She tells them the kingdom will be destroyed if things continue as they are. She tells them all to proceed underground and clear their mission as soon as possible. Yogiri and Tamachika go to the 6th floor underground accompanied by David. Yogiri wonders why David is accompanying them, and he tells them he wanted to see the 6th floor with his own eyes. Yogiri tells him to be careful, but David says everything would be alright as long as Yogiri defeats the Dark God. They arrive at the Dark God's castle, where they are greeted by thousands of monsters. Suguru leads the class in siege formation, and they run through the monster horde easily. Tamachika wonders why the class is celebrating so much, and her classmate tells her their journey so far has been easy. Juna wonders why she's always with Yogiri, and she suddenly notices he's missing. Her classmate thinks he's a loner who doesn't like to be in public, and Tamachika thinks they are mean. She decides to go look for him. Yogiri is playing some video games in the forest when he notices David walking on his own. He wonders if he's drunk, but David doesn't answer him. He sees David walking to his impending doom, and he rushes to save him. Yogiri tries to wake him up to no avail when suddenly the ground starts breaking up. The class is happy they've made it so far without a hit, and Sion suddenly appears. She tells them their journey has been too easy, and a sage may not be born. She decides to create an awakening event, so she tells them she'll make them fight each other until only one person remains, which horrifies them. Tamachika goes out to look for Yogiri, but the ground breaks and he falls down into unknown depths. Xian explains to the participants that they'll have to take each other's lives till there's only one left standing. She tells them that the trial will begin in an hour, and that an hour into the trial, whoever has not taken anyone's life will be unalived by her. Ryoka gets a notification that the second Alpha Omega door has been opened, and Carol notices this too. Piran warns them not to leave the castle walls or they'll lose their lives. She tells them the remaining survivor of the trial will be declared the winner. The participants can't believe that they have to fight each other to the death. Fukiya, the death god, decides to take Sion's life, and Sion is totally fine with this. She tells him the trial will end if he somehow succeeds in taking her life. Fukiya figures out that his abilities won't work on her, and she tells him he has a better chance of surviving if he partook in the battle royale. He uses his ability to try to take her life, but she is unaffected. He thinks his ability didn't work, but she tells him his ability worked, but she just resurrected in an instant. This pisses off Fukiya, and he keeps using his death ability, but Sion explains to him that she levels up every second, so she recovers from bus ability each time. She tells him she will always resurrect if she loses her life. Fukiya doesn't pay her any attention, and he keeps using his ability. Sion decides she has had enough, and she lands a deadly flick on Fukiya that takes him out immediately. She tells the others they don't have time to waste, and they all get into panic mode. Tomochika is moving through the forest wondering where Yogiri went to. Romiko and Juna suddenly come running to her, and they tell her they are in deep trouble, and Tomochika wonders what they are talking about. Meanwhile, Yogiri is in a free fall with David in his arms. He remembers when Asaka was telling him about a novel she read when he was much younger. She told him the novel told a story of a being that surpassed humans, and the word ethos appeared a lot in the novel. She told him that the novel said what a superior being needs is character and not ethics or morals. Young Yogiri didn't get her point, and she explained that it was impossible to apply ethics and morals to beings that surpass humans. She told him the supreme beings have to make up their own rules for themselves, and Yogiri wondered if he had to come up with his own rules. Asaka told him he had to because though he could do anything, it didn't mean he could go wild whenever he wanted. She told him to think it over carefully and decide what kind of character he should adhere to. Yogiri stops his reminiscence, and he realizes that he'll only lose his life if he decides to follow the rules he made up. He couldn't let himself lose his life after promising to return Tomochika to her world. He unlocks his abilities and he reduces his momentum. He lands gracefully on the ground and he sets David down. He realizes he's at the 7th layer, and he immediately takes out his phone to place a phone call. Yogiri wonders if the person on the phone would be alright, and she tells him she should be fine as long as the fighting has not started. He tells her to keep him posted so he will help in any way he can. Damon comes running out of nowhere wondering why he's being attacked. He notices Yogiri, and he immediately falls on his knees in apology. Yogiri wonders why Damon is on the 7th level, and Damon wonders the same thing about Yogiri. Yogiri suddenly remembers he said he'll take Damon's life if they ever met again, and Damon denies him saying such a thing. He begs Yogiri to take care of the slob trying to attack him, and Yogiri immediately takes it down. He wonders if Damon knows how to get back to the 6th layer, and Damon tells him to go back the way he came. Yogiri informs that he crash-landed on the 7th layer, so he can't go back the way he came, and Damon wonders how he's still alive. Yogiri tells him he reduces his downward momentum, so he doesn't get hurt, and Damon is amazed at Yogiri's set of abilities. Damon suggests he takes a shortcut, and Yogiri asks him to lead him to one. Damon agrees on the condition that Yogiri protects him, and Yogiri agrees. Damon is about to leave, but Yogiri tells him to piggyback David, which pisses him off. Kyoko pulls up her navigation map to see where the other participants are, and she takes out her guns before heading to the castle with Tomochika secretly tailing her. Yukimasa reads her actions from a book as she enters the room. He reads about her peppering him with bullets, but he erases it, and instead, Ayaka enters the same room as Kyoko. Mokomoko praises Tomochika for suggesting they split up. She tells her Yogiri is in the 7th layer, and he's trying to find his way back to them. Tomochika thinks she'll be safe hiding in the trees because she doesn't have a system installed in her. She suddenly hears gunshots from the castle, and they know the battle has started between the participants. Damon leads Yogiri to an elevator, and he tells him he'll drop him off on the 6th layer while he heads to the 1st layer. Yogiri tells him he has to go with him to the 6th layer since he can't operate the elevator, and Damon is bummed out. Yukimasa arrives at the room with the elevator, and he keeps reading his book, which predicts his action. He tries opening the door, and it doesn't work, but as soon as he turns to leave, the door begins to open, and his book tells him Yogiri and Damon walk out with David on his back. He tries to use this opportunity to take them both out. He writes in his book to change the future and take out Yogiri, but it only shows that he loses his life. He's surprised because his ability to change the future should be the strongest, but it keeps showing that he loses his life. He rips out the page in anger, and it kept saying the same thing. As soon as the door opens, Yogiri takes out Yukimasa, and Damon is surprised he took out his classmate without remorse. Yogiri explains that he only took out Yukimasa because he felt his intent to take them out. He places a call to Mokomoko, but there's no answer, and Damon informs him that the system approved his participation in the Sage Candidate Selection Battle. Yogiri informs him that he can't leave the 6th layer because Sion won't allow him, and this pisses Damon off. Sei is lying down having thoughts of going on a vacation when Arima tells her he's fed up with her because she's too lazy. She wonders why he didn't just take her life, and he tells her he'll feel guilty, but he decides to do what needs to be done. A rock falls on her and Erima thinks he's taken care of her, but she teleports to him and she realizes Abukawa is with him. Abukawa opens a door of lava above her head which pours down on her, but she's unscathed, which surprises them. She tells him she's immune to all attacks and she's pleased with the look of despair on their faces. She hits Abukawa with a Saint KO punch and immediately disintegrates him, and Erima is in awe of her powers. She tells him she was hit by a beam of light from a cat's eye before their field trip, which took her life. But the cats resurrected her and gave her powers through a link to the cat god as an apology. Erima is convinced she can take Arceon, so they don't have to partake in the event, but Sei thinks the event is fun. She hits him with a beam that immediately disintegrates him. She gets a notification that Damon is now part of the event, and she decides to go take his life. She teleports to them as they walk out of the castle, and Damon is surprised to see her. She wonders who Yogiri is, but he realizes she's come to attack them. She tries to attack him, but he counters her and takes out one of the cats. The other cat decides to get revenge and Sei doesn't hold back, but she suddenly loses her powers because Yogiri took out her source. She runs into the forest with shame. Kyoko and Ayaka are engaged in battle and Tomochika watches them from the trees. Makomoko informs her that someone is setting the spirits loose and there is electromagnetic interference, so she can't contact Yogiri. Tomochika decides to move instead of being a sitting duck, and she's immediately surrounded by spirits. Romiko approaches her and Tomochika can't believe she's the sorcerer. Romiko tells her she's a necromancer and she apologizes for hiding her powers. She asks her about Juna, but Romiko tells her she doesn't know her whereabouts because she disappeared. Tomochika wonders why Romiko came to her, and Romiko tells her she has a guiding spirit who is the princess of an ancient species whose name is Tiano. Tomochika is pissed that Romiko got a cool spirit while she's stuck with a spirit with a weird name. Makomoko promises to floor Tiano if they engage in battle. Romiko tells Tomochika that Tiano can't do anything but count and she'll gladly trade her for Makomoko. She suddenly makes Makomoko possess her, and she starts attacking Tomochika, who's surprised by how powerful Romiko has become. Makomoko tells her Romiko is using her powers against her will. She informs Tomochika she's in control of her battle suit, and she uses the Purge command. Yogiri and Damon walk in on them, and Yogiri hits Damon in his eyes, so he doesn't see Tomochika as her armor falls off. Yogiri offers Tomochika her shirt, and he's convinced he'll have to take our Makomoko since she's attacking Tomochika. Sora is impressed by the group Yazaki was able to form, and he tells her they aim to become strong enough to take down Sion. Sora figures out that they are attacking her because she took away his leadership position. Wazaki asks her to give in to him so he doesn't have to take her life, but she humbly declines. He orders his group to surround her and attack, but as soon as they do so, several fans appear behind them cheering Sora on. Yazaki orders his group to take out the fans, but the fans blow themselves up to take out members of his group, which surprises him. Several fans blow up Yazaki, and Haruto is worried about the tricky situation they're in. Suddenly, the jelly glob engulfs everyone but Haruto. They call out to him for help, but he uses his secret weapon to save himself, leaving them to their fate. Romiko is still petrified with fear of Yogiri, but a voice suddenly tells her she's more powerful than that since she's a necromancer. Romiko realizes she's undergoing an awakening, so she releases Makomoko. She becomes amazed by the power coursing through her body, and Yogiri wonders what is going on. Makomoko informs him that she's awakening. Romiko feels so powerful, she thinks the world is at her feet. She tries to attack Tomochika, but Yogiri uses his death ability on her to take her life. Tomochika asks Makomoko to return her gear, and she's sad Romiko had to lose her life. She decides to continue with the challenge, but Damon tells her she should be more sympathetic so he can take advantage of her. Yogiri decides to find a way out of the 6th layer to draw Sion's attention, but Damon doesn't like this idea because he thinks he'll not be spared. Ayaka is about to defeat Kyoko, but in her moment of despair, she summons a huge weapon. Carol and Ryuka join up with Yogiri because they made it a point to run for their lives. Yogiri tells them his plan to lure out Sion, but the sky suddenly turns red and Yogiri tells everyone to get behind him. Their location is hit by a huge blast and everywhere erupts in a huge explosion. Ayaka brings Kyoko down, but as she's about to finish her off, Kyoko tries to search for a weapon which can defeat her. She screams desperately, and a huge container appears in front of her, which surprises Ayaka. Yogiri decides to lure Sion out to get some intel on her, but the sky suddenly turns red, and he tells everyone to get behind him. Haruto watches the scene from a distance, and he thinks it's time to change his plans because the situation is quite dire. A light suddenly appears which surprises him, and the area suddenly goes up in a huge explosion. Kyoko regains consciousness, wondering what happened to her. Her medical unit informs her that she has lost over 60% of her body, so she's now falling into stagnation. She tells her medical unit to do something, and her medical unit tells her it has just two options. Either it ceases her current operations and waits for her to heal naturally, or heals her completely using her dragon heal. Kyoko tells her medical system to go with the latter option since it's very convenient, but her system tells her it's not recommended because it would cause irreversible damage. Her unit tells her if she goes through with it, she'll change into a dragon. Kyoko gives the medical unit approval, and the medical unit tells her to recite the command. Kyoko recites it, and she turns into a dragon immediately. Tomochika wonders what happened, and Yogiri reasons that it could be an annihilation bomb that went off. He tells her the bomb creates a huge explosion that blows everything into smithereens. He tells her the bomb also destroys any nanomachine in its blast radius, and Tomochika wonders how he knows all this. Ryoka is worried the second gate is behaving strangely, but Yogiri is more worried about them leaving the trial area, which pisses Tomochika off. Kyoko decides to continue on her vengeful path. She wonders if the people she wants to get revenge on have been eliminated. She decides to confirm this to satiate her vengeful desire, but her plan execution unit informs her that her search skills have been restricted. But it tells her she can use her Dragon Warrior skill to find out. Kyoko uses it, and her teeth begin to fall out, and when they reach the ground they turn into clones of her human body. Her plan execution unit tells her the clone can help her with the search. Damon is scared out of his mind, but he suddenly hears people marching towards them. He raises his head to see Kyoko's clones heading towards them, and he informs the others. They wonder what the clones are, and Tomochika thinks it's Kyoyot herself. Her plan execution unit informs her that 5 survivors have been discovered. She commands her clones to attack them, but they all immediately fall to the ground. Kyotok wonders what happened, and her battle unit informs her not to waste more troops because something is amiss. Her plan execution unit realizes they are facing the Alpha Omega, and she wonders why he's able to recognize them when they're in Phase 2. Her medical unit informs her that the blocking function may have been disabled since she changed into a dragon. Her plan execution unit is shocked because they were created if humanity was annihilated by the Alpha Omega, so the Alpha Omega shouldn't recognize them. Her battle unit tells her they need to retreat, and Kyoko is surprised her battle unit suggested such a cowardly strategy. She's pissed she gave up her beautiful body to change into a hideous dragon, all for nothing. She can't believe she'll have to let the survivors escape when they are within her grasp. She wonders what her purpose is now that she can't get her revenge anymore. The group of survivors notice her flying towards them, and Tomochika realizes the dragon looks like what attacked them on the bus when they first arrived in that world. Kyoko is about to shoot them with a huge fireball, but her battle unit warns her against it. Kyoko ignores the unit and goes ahead with her plan, but Yogiri uses his death skill to take her down easily. She loses consciousness, but her units continue to function for a while before going off. Tomochika approaches the clones, and she realizes they are clones of Kyoko. Damon tells them they need to keep moving despite not knowing what would happen if they did. Yogiri agrees with him, and they get moving. Damon realizes there's nothing around them, and he tells them even Xian must be confused by the events. Xian suddenly appears, and she tells him she understands everything perfectly, which surprises him. Yogiri recognizes her as the sage, and she recognizes him as the person who promised to wipe her out. Yogiri takes out her ankle, and she immediately loses her balance. Yogiri tells her he wants some answers, and he tells her to focus on him. She tries to use her powers on him, but he nullifies it. He tells her to stop her antics, or he'll take her life by accident because he's trying his best to hold back. He informs her that she can't use an instant death ability to stop his heart, and he asks her how they can get back to their original world. He takes out 2 of her fingers, and he threatens to take out more parts of her if she doesn't answer his question. She suddenly disappears, and Damon wonders why Yogiri let her teleport to safety. He's worried she can teleport anywhere and catch them unawares, but Yogiri assures him that everything is fine. Fionn arrives back at her castle, and she wonders what's happening to her. She takes off her defective hand and grows a new one, but the new one is also defective. More parts of her body lose their function, and she becomes skeptical about answering Yogiri since he's going to take her life anyway. Yuichi enters the room, but before he can help Xion, his hands and his feet lose their functions. He begs Xion to help him, and she decides to teleport back to Yogiri to beg him to spare Yuichi. Yogiri tells her he just wants to talk, and he won't attack anymore if she answers his question. He's sure she figured out that he can attack her anywhere she goes, including her allies. Everyone is freaked out by his powers, and they are happy to have Yogiri on their side. He asks her to tell him how to get back home, but she tells him there's currently no way to do that. Yogiri informs her that Damon was able to go back home when he initially arrived in that world. Xion tells him that was back when there was a link between their worlds. Yogiri wonders if the link is now gone, and Xion tells him the link is gone. She informs him that the world was weaker when there was a link. He asks her for the coordinates of their world, and a screen pops up behind her showing it. Mokomoko decides to memorize it and convince Tamachika she can be vital to getting them back home. Yogiri realizes they can return home if they have the coordinates and the right amount of energy to take them back. He asks Xion about the energy needed, and she hands him a philosopher's stone. She tells him he'll need several of them to generate enough power to get him back home, and Yogiri is surprised she'll give up such a thing easily. She tells him she doesn't need it because she doesn't rely on it. Yogiri wonders if all the other sages he took down also had philosopher's stones. Xion tells him they had, but the stone loses power once they lose their lives. She tells him the stone is the source of a sage's immortality. Yogiri wonders where the other sages are, but Xion tells him she doesn't know their location. Yogiri asks Damon about the exit, and Damon tells him he has the location of it on his map. Damon is shocked that Yogiri is about to leave Xion, and Yogiri tells him he won't be taking her life despite hating her so much. Damon is surprised. He's showing her mercy despite her giving them a taste of hell on earth. They walk away leaving Xion, and she remembers she has to tend to Yuichi. She begins flying, but the red jelly erupts from the ground, which surprises her. She takes them out wondering what they are, but she decides to get back to Yuichi as soon as she can. She tries to teleport, but she can't, and she notices that the red jelly has attached to her leg. She wonders what's happening when Mana suddenly starts speaking to her. Mana tells her she thought her immune system was reacting to something worthwhile, but it turns out to be Xion, who's a joke of a sage. Xion wonders if she's a dark god, and she flies upwards, leaving her leg to be devoured. She realizes the sage test may have been a mistake. She tries to teleport, but she suddenly loses her balance and falls to the ground into Mana's jelly. Mana makes jest of Xion for making up a fraudulent system just to call herself a sage. Fionn realizes she has lost her powers, but Mana decides to use her to nourish her brother. Fionn wonders what she's talking about, but the jelly begins to devour her, and she realizes she can't do anything to stop it. She decides to warn Mana about Yogiri, and she tells her Yogiri will take her down. Xion remembers Yuichi one last time before she's completely devoured by Mana's jelly. Two huge robots suddenly land in the capital, but a little robot appears to try to take them down. It attacks one of them, but the robot regenerates itself, while the other one proceeds to destroy the capital. It's about to start its destruction when it's suddenly engulfed by the jelly. The jelly spreads through the capital, and Rick notices this. He decides to evacuate the soldiers at the gate before they fall to the jelly. He sees his opportunity to carry out his role as royalty, and he decides to fight off the jelly. He swings his sword at the jelly, and he destroys it to the amusement of the soldiers. They tell him he is indeed worthy of becoming a sword master, but Rick tells them he's not having much impact. More of the jelly suddenly rushes towards them, and Rick wonders if the sage candidates broke the seal of the Dark God. Halaris relishes in the engulfing of the capital by the jelly. He's glad that Mana has awakened to manifest herself upon the earth. Damon brings everyone to him, and he's surprised they are able to use a shortcut. Yogiri uses his death ability, and Damon wonders why he took him down right away. Yogiri tells him he felt Halaris intent to take them down, that was why he took him down. Yogiri wonders where they are, and David tells him they are in the seat of the Diving King. Tamachika realizes the jelly is engulfing the capital, and Carol notices it's about to go over the walls. The jelly breaks through the walls, and Damon tells them it's all his fault. Tamachika wonders why he said that, and he informs them that Mana was the dark god who was at the bottom of the underworld. He tells them everything is happening because he broke the seal holding her. Yogiri realizes that was why he was trying to rush out of the trial area. Yogiri figures out that it would be difficult to move around because of the jelly. The jelly suddenly gathers around them and Mana's face forms. She recognizes Damon, which surprises Yogiri, and she tells Damon to guide her to Yogiri, who took her brother's life. He immediately rats Yogiri out, which disappoints Tomochika and Yogiri. Mana realizes he's the one who took down her brother, and she tries to take him down, but he pulls a Uno reverse and takes her down instead. Damon begins praising him, but Tomochika wonders what they will do about all the jelly. David suggests they go up to the roof, and he shows them an aircraft. Yogiri apologizes to Damon since they have to leave him behind because the aircraft can only hold 5 people. Makomoko suggests they stay behind while the others board the aircraft. Tomochika wonders why they stayed behind, and Makomoko decides to try out an experimental armor on Tomochika. She changes Tomochika's armor, and Tomochika is embarrassed by how revealing it is. Yogiri wonders how he'll fly, and Makomoko tells him Tomochika can carry him if he holds onto her. He quickly grabs onto her, and Tomochika is surprised he knows nothing of boundaries. Tomochika takes off from the ledge by spreading her cape, and they fly out of the capital. Yogiri wonders what they should do going forward, and Tomochika decides to take a breather since they've been through a lot. David offers to guide them to a nearby city, but Tomochika suddenly notices Damon is missing. Carol and Ryoka decide to tag along with them, but Yogiri tells them he's only gathering enough energy to take him and Tomochika back home. Tomochika is surprised by this, but he tells her he can't take responsibility for 2 more people. Carol and Ryoka tell him they're fine with his decision. Yogiri asks Tomochika for a piggyback ride since he's sleepy, but she declines his offer. Ryoka offers to give him one because they have to do everything to protect him, which pisses off Tomochika. A carriage suddenly arrives and Risley jumps out of it, and she rushes to Yogiri. She asks him to marry her, but he declines her offer because he doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in jail. Theodosia and Euphemia also come out of the carriage, and Yogiri is surprised to see them. Risley offers him a philosopher's stone, so he will listen to her request. Meanwhile, the Divine King stares at the aftermath left by Yogiri, and he realizes he can't ignore such a monster. A robot descends to pick up Haruto, and it disappears into the stars. Damon is running through the forest, and he decides to go build up his own harem world. Tomochika is sitting in the carriage with Yogiri on her lap. He dreams of when Asaka told him it's fine for him to use his powers on people who he doesn't like. She told him to follow rules he comes up with himself instead of following conventional justice. Tomochika looks up to see that Risley is jealous that she's so close to Yogiri. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.